I do find that quite a lot. A lot of people, when it comes to the gear, lever and linkage systems, is they run, whether it's a reverse linkage or whatever, when the rose joints here have a lot of slop in them, or can have a lot of slop in them. And because the quick shifters on most modern bikes now are quite sensitive, and it's ultimately a pressure unit, sometimes slop creates vibration which can actually start to trigger the quick shift systems, so it can, when you actually need it, they've actually triggered and they don't work very well. So making sure that you've got or new rose joints with very little play is quite important. The next thing I think is really important when it comes to the gear linkage thing is getting your gear lever in exactly the right place. Now it might seem terribly obvious, but it amazes me how many people. I was dealing with a chap the other day who had his gear lever, I said, quite high, and as a result he could get his foot on top of the gear lever to press it down to change up because he had race shift. But the problem was basically his foot was more or less resting on it all the time. And because these are pressure cells, it was actually detecting his foot on it. So when he did need to press the gear lever to actually trigger, it was already triggered. So he kept wondering why he was struggling to change gear, because it had already triggered. All we did, and it transformed it, was lowered his gear lever, so when he wanted to change up, he could quite easily move his foot over the gear lever and press it down, and he could still also get underneath to change down through the gearbox should he need to. Because he had it so high, he struggled like mad to get his foot on top of it, and that was why he was triggering it all the time. So it can be something as little as 5mm one way or the other, can make a hell of a difference. So good rose joints and gear lever position, particularly important. Fulcrums are particularly important as well. The perfect activation for this sort of linkage is having the lever and the rod at 90 degrees, getting that so it's a perfect 90 degree. If, like at the top one here for instance, as you can see when I'm pressing it down, 90 is roughly up near where my finger is, so it's already down to sort of, I don't know, maybe 25 degrees. So if that carries on further on down, it's way past 90 and it's starting to effectively run out of positive action. The perfect, if they were both at 90 degrees, as it happens this one is a little bit down. So the perfect is to have these at 90 degrees. That's when you've got the ultimate fulcrum. If they are out, let's say they are both, at horrible angles, you'll actually discover then that the gear lever can actually be quite heavy by comparison. So heavy gear changes, check your fulcrums, and also the pivot point. Here the pivot point is there, that's your activation, that's your pivot point, and that's the rod it's pushing. The closer that rod becomes to here, the closer that gets in, you'll have more movement, but the lighter it'll become. So if you're really struggling with a heavy gear change and it's wearing a hole in your boot or something like that, is if you've got the chance, is reduce that fulcrum down. Keep it at 90 degrees, but reduce the length of that essentially.